For 80,000 years, the galaxy had been silent. No signals, no whispers, no signs that any other intelligent life was out there. It was as if the universe itself had forgotten how to speak. Then one day, something incredible happened. A faint, trembling signal broke through the void, lost for 8 millennia, finally reaching a listening post on a quiet, unassuming planet called Earth. The equipment buzzed, lights flickered, and every astronomer, every scientist in the command center froze. No one could believe what they were seeing. The galaxy had remembered us. At first, it was just a faint blip on the sensors, easily dismissed as cosmic noise. But as the readings grew more consistent, a chilling realization spread across the room. This wasn't random interference. Someone or something had sent this signal intentionally, and somehow humanity had picked it up after thousands of generations had passed. The implications were staggering. Civilization had spent decades searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, broadcasting messages into the void, wondering if anyone was listening. And now, without warning, it seemed the galaxy had finally answered, and it had chosen us. The world outside the observatory was oblivious at first. People walked the streets, went about their daily lives, unaware that humanity was standing on the brink of something that could redefine everything we knew about existence. Inside the research center, tension hung thick in the air. Scientists worked feverishly, analyzing the signal's patterns, trying to decode what had been sent across the unfathomable distance of space and time. Each pulse, each modulation was a whisper from the past, a message that had survived when entire civilizations could have risen and fallen without ever knowing it existed. It wasn't just the science that captivated everyone, it was the story behind it. Who had sent this signal? Why had it taken 80,000 years to reach Earth? Was it a warning, a greeting, or a call for help? Humanity had always imagined meeting intelligent life out there in the stars, but no one had truly prepared for the moment it actually happened. Now, the questions were endless and the answers were nowhere in sight. Among the team of researchers was a quiet figure who had spent years dreaming of this very moment. Not seeking fame or glory, they had devoted their life to the hope that humanity was not alone. And yet, staring at the screen, watching the signal flicker and pulse, even they felt a shiver of doubt. Could humans truly comprehend what had reached them? Or had the universe just reminded us how small and fragile we really were? Then came the first breakthrough. A pattern, subtle at first, but undeniable. The signal wasn't just random noise, it carried a structure, a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat across the void. The discovery set the team on fire, sparking a race to understand the message before it faded again. If humanity was going to respond, if we were going to speak back to the galaxy, the world needed to know. And yet, there was a deeper tension, one that no algorithm or sensor could resolve. Every message carried risk. One misstep, one wrong interpretation could trigger consequences humanity couldn't even imagine. And still, the choice was made. Humanity would answer. For the first time in recorded history, we would speak across the stars, bridging 80,000 years of silence with our voices, our technology, and our spirit. The question was simple, yet terrifying. Would the galaxy understand us? And more importantly, would it respond in kind, or would our message drift into the void, another lost whisper in the cosmic dark? As the team prepared the first human reply, the countdown began. Lights flashed, consoles beeped, and the weight of centuries pressed down on every decision. Outside, the night sky glittered with distant suns, each a silent witness to the moment when humanity chose to reach beyond itself. And in the stillness, just as the first transmission was about to be sent, the signal pulsed again, faster this time, urgent, almost alive. No one had seen this coming. The galaxy had been silent for 80,000 years, and now it seemed to be waiting, watching, testing, and humanity, for the first time, was ready to speak back. But the question hung in the air, impossible to answer. What would answer us in return? The signal's pulse had thrown the observatory into a frenzy. But it wasn't just the scientists who felt the gravity of the moment. Across the globe, a network of communication channels buzzed with speculation and fear. Governments debated secrecy and disclosure, media outlets scrambled for headlines, and everyday people, unaware of the full details, felt the subtle tremor of something monumental approaching. Humanity had always imagined that one day we might hear from the stars. Now that day had arrived, and it carried a weight no one had anticipated. Inside the control room, the team worked like a single organism, their minds synchronized with the rhythm of the signal. Each member brought their own story to the table. Some had spent decades staring at the night sky. Others had devoted years to the intricacies of quantum communication, and some had simply grown up dreaming of moments like this. Yet, none of them had ever truly prepared for the reality of what it meant to hear a message that had traveled 80,000 years through the void. Every pulse carried questions that no one on Earth had answers for, and every answer they tried to uncover seemed to spawn 10 more mysteries. The signal wasn't just unusual, it was sophisticated. Its patterns hinted at intelligence far beyond what humanity had encountered in our own history. There were sequences that suggested mathematical concepts, hints of language structures, and even fragments that seemed almost emotional. It was as if a civilization from the distant past, long vanished or lost, had reached across time to touch our world. The implications were staggering. If this civilization had once existed, what had become of it? And if it had vanished, why did its voice persist across millennia? One researcher, whose life had been spent mapping distant star systems, leaned back in exhaustion, rubbing their eyes. "Or not just listening to a message," they muttered, voice low. "We're listening to a civilization frozen in time, and somehow we're its first response." The weight of the statement wasn't lost on anyone. The idea that humanity might be the next link in a chain spanning tens of thousands of years made the room both electrified and terrified. Outside the observatory, the world seemed strangely calm, a sharp contrast to the tension inside. Yet, small signs of the signal's impact began to appear. Amateur astronomers shared glimpses of anomalies in the night sky. Scientists debated theories on social media and private forums. Even artists and musicians began to interpret the cosmic pulses, turning them into songs and visual art. Humanity, in its unpredictable, chaotic way, was beginning to respond not just scientifically, but culturally, emotionally. For the first time, the stars felt closer, more alive, more human. Yet, for all the excitement, doubt lingered. How much of this signal could be understood? Were there dangers hidden in the transmission, traps laid by a civilization we could not imagine? Theories swirled in hushed conversations behind closed doors. Some feared it might be a test, others a warning. Still, the overwhelming curiosity of humanity could not be contained. The very fact that we could receive this signal, that we could hope to speak back, ignited a sense of pride and audacity in every mind present. Humans had always been small in the cosmic scale, but now we had a voice that could bridge eons of silence. Meanwhile, the observatory's computers ran non-stop, analyzing patterns and cross-referencing data with every known language, mathematical code, and natural phenomenon. Hours turned into days, yet the signal never stopped. Its persistence was unnerving. It felt deliberate, almost sentient. Each pulse seemed to challenge humanity to understand it, to prove that we were worthy of responding. And as the days stretched on, the team began to notice anomalies, tiny deviations in the signal's rhythm, patterns that didn't match any known cosmic phenomena. It was as if the message were alive, evolving slightly with each passing hour. Amid the chaos, one fact became clear: humanity had a choice. We could stay cautious, remain observers in the vastness of space, or we could step forward and reply. The first draft of our response had already begun to take shape: simple, clear, undeniably human. It carried the essence of curiosity, of hope, of defiance. But even as the words were encoded, questions gnawed at the edges of every mind in the observatory. Would this message be understood? Would it spark friendship, curiosity, or something else entirely? And then, without warning, the signal pulsed again, sharper this time, faster, almost urgent. Every console flickered, lights throbbing in sync with the cosmic heartbeat. The room fell silent. It was no longer just a message, it was a presence. Something was waiting for us to make the next move. Something was listening. And in that moment, as humanity prepared to speak back across 80,000 years of silence, The team realized that the universe was far larger, far stranger, and far more alive than any of them had ever imagined. And yet, for the first time, humanity was ready to step into its story. The signal had become more than a puzzle, it was a mirror reflecting humanity's own fears and ambitions. While the observatory team worked tirelessly, outside observers began to weigh in with their own interpretations. Some saw it as an invitation, proof that humans were finally stepping onto the galactic stage. Others warned of dangers unseen, of civilizations that might test or even punish those who dared to speak too loudly across the void. Social media erupted with theories, conspiracies, and endless debates. Humanity was dividing itself even as it prepared to take its first real step into the stars. Inside the observatory, tension built with each passing hour. One group argued for caution, advocating careful analysis and multiple simulations before sending even the simplest reply. They feared that a misstep could be catastrophic, that some ancient intelligence might perceive us as a threat. Another faction pushed for action, insisting that waiting would waste the rare chance to connect, that humanity's very nature demanded that we respond with curiosity and courage. Their arguments were passionate, personal, sometimes even heated, because this wasn't just a scientific question, it was a test of identity. Outside, the world's leaders became quietly involved, forming a task force to oversee humanity's first message. Their debates were cloaked in secrecy, but the stakes were clear. A wrong move could ignite panic, provoke conflict, or draw attention from forces we could not imagine. Meanwhile, everyday citizens watched the night sky with renewed fascination, some finding hope in the idea that humans were no longer alone, others fearing that the universe might not welcome us. The planet itself seemed to hold its breath. Even within the team, subtle fractures began to emerge. A younger scientist, whose entire life had been shaped by dreams of contact, began to push for more experimental approaches to decode the signal. "We have a chance to learn, not just respond," they insisted, eyes bright with excitement. "If we don't take risks now, we may never understand what's been sent to us." Their words sparked tension with the more cautious researchers, who reminded everyone that patience had allowed the signal to survive for 80,000 years. There was no need to rush. The debate became almost philosophical. What was humanity's role in the galaxy, and how much should we gamble to prove ourselves? Meanwhile, subtle anomalies in the signal deepened the mystery. Tiny variations suggested that the message was not static. It shifted in ways that seemed almost deliberate, hinting at intelligence that could observe and respond to our attempts at understanding. Some began to speculate that the signal itself was alive in some sense, not conscious as humans are, but adaptive, aware, capable of testing us before we even spoke. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Could the galaxy really be listening this closely after all this time? Across the globe, the subplots multiplied. Amateur astronomers made unexpected discoveries, spotting anomalies near distant stars that might be linked to the signal. Media outlets began sensationalizing the story, creating fear as much as fascination. Meanwhile, a quiet group of engineers worked on the first human transmission, painstakingly encoding words, concepts, even emotions into a format the signal might recognize. Every decision carried weight, because this wasn't just communication, it was the first impression humanity would make across 80,000 years of silence. Even personal stories became entwined with the cosmic stakes. Families watched scientists on live feeds. Children whispered about alien friends or dangers in the stars, and every ordinary life suddenly felt touched by the extraordinary. Humanity was united and divided at the same time, driven by curiosity, pride, and fear. And in the quiet moments, when the team alone listened to the pulsing signal, a sense of vulnerability settled over them. The galaxy had reached out, and for the first time, humans realized how fragile and fleeting their voices could be against the backdrop of such vast time and space. As the first human message began to take shape, the signal pulsed faster than ever, almost impatiently. Every monitor, every sensor seemed to vibrate with energy. It wasn't just a test, it felt like a challenge. Could humanity rise to meet it? Could we prove ourselves worthy of being heard? And beyond the lab, beyond the technology, beyond the calculations, the question gnawed at everyone. Was the galaxy truly waiting for a reply, or had we stumbled into something we could neither control nor predict? And then, in the middle of the night, a new pattern emerged in the signal, a series of pulses that didn't match anything seen before. It was neither a greeting nor a warning, but something in between. It carried a rhythm that seemed almost impatient, as if the galaxy itself was urging humanity forward while testing our resolve. The room fell silent. Every eye followed the screens, hearts pounding. Whatever was on the other side, it was watching. And for the first time, humanity understood that the real challenge wasn't just responding, it was surviving the consequences of speaking across the stars. The first human transmission was ready. Every calculation had been checked, every sequence carefully encoded to reflect curiosity, intelligence, and the best of what humanity could offer. The room was silent except for the soft hum of machinery, the rhythmic blinking of monitors, and the pulse of the signal that had haunted them for weeks. For the team, this was more than science, it was the culmination of millennia of human hope. And yet, excitement was tinged with fear. For the first time, humans were no longer observers. We were participants in a conversation that had been waiting 80,000 years to happen. As the countdown began, hearts raced. Fingers hovered over keyboards, eyes locked on screens, and every member of the team felt the weight of the moment pressing down like gravity. Outside, the world waited unknowingly. Inside, every breath seemed amplified, every sound louder. This was humanity's first real step across the stars, and none of them could predict what would happen next. The transmission started slowly, pulses of light and sound sent into the void with careful precision. For a few heartbeats, nothing changed. Then the signal responded faster, sharper, almost as if it had been waiting for that exact moment. The room went still, all calculations forgotten, all debates suspended. Humanity was no longer sending messages into silence. The galaxy was listening, and it had made its presence felt. In the following hours, the signal became unpredictable. Patterns that had once been steady shifted and swirled like a storm across the sensors. The team realized that the response was not just intelligent, it was reactive. Every pulse seemed to test their understanding, probing for meaning, for intent. Some sequences felt almost like laughter, others like warning. It was a language that no human had ever encountered, yet the urgency was undeniable. Whoever or whatever was on the other side was paying attention. Outside the lab, the ripple effects began to show. Social media feeds filled with speculation. Some hailed humanity as pioneers, a species brave enough to answer the stars. Others warned of consequences too dangerous to imagine. Governments debated secrecy and disclosure, while the public, hungry for answers, speculated endlessly. It was no longer just a scientific endeavor. Humanity itself had become part of the signal, its culture, fears, and curiosity all embedded in the pulse. Within the observatory, tension grew. The younger scientists who had pushed for experimental approaches began suggesting risky interpretations of the signal. "We have to try something new," they argued, voice tight with anticipation. "We can't just wait. The message is alive, it's reacting to us. If we don't adapt, we might miss something crucial." The more cautious researchers hesitated. Every change carried risk. One wrong attempt, one misinterpretation, could provoke consequences humanity wasn't ready for. Still, the sense of urgency was impossible to ignore. And then anomalies appeared. Tiny deviations in the signal suggested that it wasn't just observing, they were influencing the environment. Consoles flickered in unpredictable patterns, screens displayed data no one could immediately explain, and the lights in the observatory seemed to pulse in time with the cosmic heartbeat. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but undeniable. The galaxy was not only watching, it was interacting. The line between observation and action blurred. Meanwhile, the personal stakes became more vivid. Scientists began noticing subtle effects in themselves: restlessness, sudden flashes of insight, even dreams that seemed to carry fragments of the signal. Humanity's first real contact was reshaping not just knowledge but perception. Outside, families whispered to one another, children drew pictures inspired by the pulsing light in the sky, and ordinary lives felt electrified by the idea that something alive in the universe was listening. The tension in the room reached a breaking point when a new series of pulses arrived, faster, sharper, almost insistent. Every monitor blinked in perfect sync, and for a fleeting moment it seemed as if the message itself had grown impatient. Eyes widened. Some researchers leaned forward, trying to interpret what they saw. Others took a step back, instinctively recoiling from the power emanating from something they could neither see nor touch. The line between exhilaration and fear blurred. Humanity had never been this exposed to the universe before. The team realized that the next transmission, the next move, could define humanity's place in the galaxy or expose its vulnerability. The stakes were immense. The entire species, every achievement, every mistake hung in balance. And as they prepared for the next sequence, the signal pulsed again, stronger than ever, almost alive, almost demanding. It was clear now, the universe had reached across 80,000 years of silence, and it was testing humanity in ways no one could fully comprehend. Every heart in the room pounded in unison. This was the moment before the storm, the instant before humanity would truly discover whether the galaxy was a friend, a test, or something entirely different. The pulse quickened, the lights flickered, and the weight of millennia pressed down as if the universe itself were holding its breath. And in that electric silence, one thought struck everyone with unrelenting clarity. Humanity was no longer alone, and the answer we sought might not be what we expected. The pulse had grown stronger, more insistent, as if the galaxy itself were leaning closer to listen. Every eye in the observatory was glued to the monitors, every hand frozen over controls, every breath held. Humanity had stepped forward to speak across 80,000 years of silence. But now it became clear that the universe had something else in mind, something unexpected. The first hint of trouble came quietly, almost innocuously. A small cluster of sensors began detecting interference, subtle, irregular fluctuations in electromagnetic fields near the transmission tower. At first, the team dismissed it as equipment error, the kind that occurred in high-stakes experiments. But the anomalies persisted, spreading across multiple systems. Consoles beeped, lights flickered erratically, and for a brief moment the team felt an unfamiliar chill. The signal had changed. It was no longer just responsive. It was acting. Then the monitors displayed something that no one could have predicted, new patterns in the signal that seemed almost like warnings. Not words, not numbers, but abstract shapes and sequences pulsing faster than anything previously recorded. Some seemed to resemble trajectories, paths through space. Others hinted at energy signatures that suggested movement, as if whatever had sent the signal might not be stationary. The realization hit the team like a shockwave. The galaxy wasn't just listening. It was coming closer, or at least something connected to it was. A murmur ran through the room. "It's tracking us," one of the researchers whispered, almost afraid to speak the words aloud. The younger scientist, whose excitement had driven much of the earlier progress, shook their head, eyes wide. "No, it's more than that. It's communicating in ways we've never seen. It's testing us. Maybe even warning us." Every pulse now carried urgency, a rhythm almost too fast to follow. The observatory's computers struggled to decode it, producing errors and loops that no one could explain. Outside, the world remained unaware, oblivious to the fact that humanity's first step into the galaxy had triggered something far larger than anyone had imagined. Governments debated whether to take control, while scientists scrambled to update their models. Amateur astronomers, scanning the sky for anomalies, began reporting strange bursts of light near previously empty regions of space. Satellites registered sudden changes in radiation levels, and even power grids experienced unexplainable fluctuations. Humanity's reach into the cosmos was no longer just symbolic, it was having real, physical consequences on Earth itself. Meanwhile, the team inside the observatory faced a more personal conflict. Divisions that had simmered for weeks now threatened to boil over. One faction argued that they should immediately halt all transmissions, fearing the signal's escalating intensity indicated danger. Another group, driven by curiosity and pride, insisted that to stop now would be to abandon humanity's first true chance to communicate beyond our solar system. Emotions ran high, tempers flared, and the weight of centuries of human hope pressed down on every decision. The argument wasn't just about science, it was about survival, ambition, and identity. Then came the unexpected twist. The signal began to fragment. It split into multiple simultaneous streams, pulsing in seemingly contradictory ways. One set appeared analytical, almost logical, probing mathematical structures. Another was emotional, rhythmic, and chaotic, as if testing human intuition or perception. And a third stream, strangely persistent, seemed to carry a pattern that defied everything humanity knew about physics, almost as if the message itself were bending reality slightly around it. The team stared, speechless. This was no ordinary communication. This was a force, vast, intelligent, and undeniably aware. The tension intensified when the younger scientist noticed a subtle but alarming effect on the transmission equipment. Systems began overloading as the signal's pulses grew stronger, reacting to humanity's attempts to reply. Lights stuttered, consoles rebooted on their own, and one panel even emitted a low hum that felt almost alive. "It's too powerful," the cautious researcher said, voice trembling. "We're not just sending a message, we're drawing attention, and we don't know what's on the other side." As the team struggled to stabilize the equipment, a new question loomed over every mind in the room. Was this entity or entities benevolent, or were they testing humanity as prey tests prey? Every pulse, every shift in the signal suggested a purpose beyond comprehension. The universe had reached across 80,000 years of silence, and what it wanted now was not just words, it was proof. Proof that humanity could survive, adapt, and respond. And the cost of failure, though unseen, felt immediate, palpable, as if the galaxy itself might withdraw or worse, retaliate. The final warning came in a burst that lit the observatory in a ghostly glow. The signal pulsed with intensity so high that it triggered alarms in every system. For a moment, the team froze, realizing that the game had changed. Humanity's first contact was no longer a simple exchange. It had become a high-stakes confrontation with the unknown. And as they braced for the next sequence, every mind in the room knew the truth. Whatever was out there, whatever had waited 80,000 years to speak, it had escalated the conflict, and there was no turning back. The room was bathed in the eerie glow of monitors as the signal reached a crescendo. Every system hummed, buzzed, and flashed in a rhythm that felt almost alive. Humanity had waited 80,000 years to hear the stars, and now the stars had responded not with words, but with a force that demanded full attention. The observatory team, hearts pounding, realized that the moment of truth had arrived. This was no longer a message. It was an encounter. As the pulses intensified, the fragmented streams of the signal began to converge, forming patterns that the team could finally interpret. Mathematical constructs, previously indecipherable, now revealed a logic that transcended anything humans had imagined. It was a sequence of instructions, a map of sorts, pointing toward distant coordinates far beyond the solar system. The galaxy, it seemed, was guiding humanity to something. The excitement was electrifying, yet fear lingered in every corner of the room. These were not idle instructions. They carried weight, purpose, and risk. The younger scientist, trembling with anticipation, whispered, "It's not just a message. It's a challenge." The cautious researchers nodded, realizing the truth. Humanity's reply had been noticed, analyzed, and now acknowledged. For the first time, humans were not observers, but active participants in an interstellar dialogue. The question had shifted from, "Is anyone out there?" to, "Can we rise to meet them?" Then came the moment that made every breath catch in the room. The signal's pulses aligned into a single, overwhelming burst, saturating the equipment and nearly overloading the observatory's power grid. Lights flickered violently, screens went blank for heart-stopping seconds, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, the room fell silent. On the main monitor appeared a single symbol and intricate geometric shape that seemed to shift subtly, almost breathing. It was an unmistakable sign. Humanity had been accepted. The galaxy had acknowledged us. For a moment, jubilation swept the room. Cheers erupted, tears streamed, and even the most cautious researchers could not hide the awe that gripped them. Humanity had spoken across 80,000 years of silence and had been understood. It was the realization of every dream, every hope, every story about what it meant to be human in the vast, indifferent cosmos. For the first time, humans had proof that we were not alone and that our curiosity, courage, and ingenuity mattered. But the relief was short-lived. As the team watched, the symbol on the monitor shifted, breaking apart into thousands of smaller shapes. Each fragment moved independently, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to test the observatory itself. The machine struggled to track the sequences, alarms blaring as systems approached overload. The symbol was no longer just a message, it was a warning, a reminder that this first contact carried consequences. Humanity had passed the initial test, but the galaxy had more in store. And then, in a moment that silenced even the most excitable scientists, the signal projected a map of energy readings across the galaxy, clusters of stars, arcs of light, and faint distortions in space itself. It was clear now, the galaxy had been monitoring humanity not only for our voice but for our readiness. And according to the map, the universe itself was far more dynamic and dangerous than anyone had imagined. The pulse patterns hinted at forces moving faster than light, energy fields that defied known physics, and regions that seemed alive. The galaxy wasn't just speaking. It was orchestrating a test, a challenge that humanity might not yet fully comprehend. As the team tried to stabilize the equipment, the younger scientist noticed something even stranger. Hidden within the pulses was a faint secondary signal, one so subtle it had gone unnoticed until now. It wasn't part of the initial transmission, nor the instructions, nor the map. It was something else entirely. A voice, not mechanical or mathematical, but unmistakably intelligent and deliberate. The words were untranslatable, but the tone carried intent. Humanity had been accepted, yes, but it was clear that the galaxy expected more. Something was coming, something aware, patient, and far beyond human reckoning. The room fell into tense silence, each scientist absorbing the revelation. Humanity had made its first connection, proven its worth, and survived the initial challenge, but the story was far from over. The galaxy had spoken, but its final message was clear. The conversation had only just begun, and the real test was still ahead. Every heart in the observatory felt it. Every mind raced with questions that no one could yet answer. And in the depths of that silent, glowing room, the team understood the truth that had been waiting across 80,000 years of cosmic silence. Humanity had been heard, but the universe had plans far larger, far more complex, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The monitors pulsed one last time, sending a final fragment of the signal, almost like a heartbeat, across the void. It carried both promise and warning. Humanity had spoken. The galaxy had listened, and now everything had changed. And as the team stared into the flickering lights, they realized the most important truth of all. The adventure of humanity among the stars had only just begun, and the universe had already taken notice. The room was quiet now, the frenetic energy of the past days replaced by a calm that felt almost surreal. Humanity had spoken, the galaxy had answered, and the pulse that had once overwhelmed every sensor had slowed to a gentle rhythm, as if observing, approving, or simply waiting. The team stared at the monitors, absorbing the enormity of what had just occurred. They had made contact across 80,000 years of silence, and the universe had responded not with hostility, but with an invitation, a test, and a hint of what lay beyond. Outside, the world began to learn of the breakthrough. Media reports filtered through carefully, revealing the historic first human message sent into the cosmos and the unprecedented response it had received. Citizens marveled at the possibility of intelligent life, and the realization that humanity was part of a larger story stretching across the stars. Schools held discussions, families gathered under the night sky, and for the first time in generations, the universe felt alive to everyone, not just scientists in observatories. Humanity had achieved a milestone, and the excitement was tangible. Inside the lab, the team worked to stabilize the final sequences of the signal. The fragmented maps, energy readings, and subtle secondary pulses were carefully documented, analyzed, and preserved. Though no one could fully predict the consequences of this first contact, there was pride, relief, and awe in equal measure. They had not only survived the challenge, they had proven humanity's capacity for curiosity, ingenuity, and resilience. It was a moment that would define the species, a story to be remembered for generations. The subplots that had quietly unfolded during the ordeal now found their own resolutions. The younger scientist, whose boldness had driven much of the experimentation, finally leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. They had risked too much at times, but their courage had been vindicated. The cautious researchers who had feared every misstep now nodded in respect. Balance had been achieved. Every personality, every approach had been necessary to reach this moment. Humanity had survived not because of a single person, but because of the collective effort of many minds, many hearts, and many perspectives working in harmony. Yet the galaxy's message left one enduring question: what had it truly wanted from humanity? The instructions and maps hinted at exploration, challenges, and understanding, but no answer could fully capture the depth of what lay ahead. Humanity had learned that the universe was not merely a backdrop for survival, it was an active participant, a teacher, and sometimes a tester. The lesson was clear: curiosity, intelligence, and courage were as vital as technology and science when stepping into the unknown. As the observatory's lights dimmed and the hum of machinery settled, the team reflected on what this first contact meant. The pulse across the void had been a bridge, connecting human curiosity to something older, larger, and beyond comprehension. It had reminded everyone that humanity's story was not confined to Earth alone. Across millennia, across stars, our species could leave a mark, could speak, could be heard. That was the true victory, not merely surviving, not merely receiving a message, but participating in the grand, infinite dialogue of the cosmos. Families of the team members visited quietly in the days that followed. Children stared at the screens, imagining the distant civilizations that had reached across time and space. People began to see themselves differently, not just as Earthlings, but as part of a larger, interconnected universe. For humanity, the first contact was not an endpoint, but a doorway. The galaxy had whispered our name, and we had responded. And though the ultimate answers remained hidden among the stars, the moment was enough to shift perspective forever. In the final hours before leaving the observatory, the team paused one last time to observe the night sky. The stars seemed sharper, more alive, and almost familiar. The faint traces of the signal still pulsed faintly across the sensors, subtle but undeniable. Humanity had spoken, the galaxy had listened, and in that shared silence, a promise lingered, that we were no longer alone, and that the journey had only just begun. Every heartbeat, every pulse, every thought felt connected to the vast cosmos, reminding everyone that exploration, courage, and hope were what defined humans best. And as the team powered down the observatory, the youngest member turned to the others and said quietly, "We've answered the galaxy, but I think it's only the first question." The words hung in the air, a gentle reminder that the universe was infinite, mysterious, and patient. Humanity had survived the first test, learned to speak across millennia, and discovered the courage to reach for the stars. But the adventure was far from over, and the lessons of this encounter would echo for generations. For the first time, Earthlings truly understood what it meant to be heard and what it meant to belong in the galaxy. The stars glimmered silently above, and humanity at last had a voice among them.